Kalyana Mita Ajaw Hova. The Kalyana Mita Ajaw Hoyi Ditana Yausa Goga Sapu Vid of Yoga. Yausaga Sapuria who are Sonta de Anine Dine Sapombido Shimpaya Mava.
As the Sayadaw announced this afternoon, he will now talk on the qualities of a good spiritual friend. If you can recall, the Sayadaw started to talk on the subject very soon after his arrival in the center. So tonight's talk is very significant in the fact it's very significant because it will sort of round up this whole series of talks which had followed the introductory talk on a good spiritual friend.
Chinjo Piamiro Pioba, Navida Bogumia Leve Tabido Nayaro Pubido Shime. Navia Bogumia Leve Jakucha Ududa Pipova Madabuba.
The Sayadaw will very briefly go through the main points so that those who have already heard the talk may refresh their memory, and those who are new will have a chance to understand the essence of the talk.
Patama Kalyana Maida Kongaro Pia Tila Adwe Nitesia Le Pia Pia Gona Pizza Melisura.
The first virtue or qualification required of a good spiritual friend is that of lovableness. Lovableness in the sense of being liked because of purity of conduct.
Pira Guru Taniabin Leve Guru body. Liza Laute Gomlesia me.
The second is that a spiritual friend should be a person held in high esteem, a respected person.
Pira Mahavaniya Amia Mita Tajin Le Kayame, Niabi Miano Mianozia Lepia.
Thirdly, he must be one who is cherished by others, one who is the object of others' metta.
Wata Pioso Soma a bit Vilushi, Madora Vilushi, Pioso Soma Diame.
Fourthly, he must have the courage and discretion to admonish when it is appropriate to do so. When certain faults are seen, then he should have this quality of being compassionate enough to point out others' faults so that they can change for the better.
Wachanekama Durubaga a bit mean look, Koma, Chuinja Shini look. တတိပေးလို့ရှိရင်လည်းပဲတိခဏနိုင်စွမ်းရှိရမယ်တိခဏနဲ့ကိုရှိရမယ်
Fifthly, he must also have forbearance and patience in the face of criticisms made by others. When others point out certain faults of his, certain shortcomings, then he should exercise patience and be accepting if they are true.
ပြီးတော့ကံပီရံကြကထံကတ္တာဆိုတာလေးနဲ့တဲ့တရားစကားကိုလည်းပဲပြောဟောနိုင်သူလည်းဖြစ်ရမယ်ရှင်းပြနိုင်သူလည်းဖြစ်ရမယ်
Sixthly, he must be one who has the competency of giving profound Dhamma talks, profound talks on profound subjects of the Dhamma.
နောက်ဆုံးကတော့နောကြထာနီနိယောဇကောဆိုတာမသိတော်သောအရာမှာကိုယ်ကျိုးအတွက်သူတို့ဘာမစီခိုင်းတတ်သူလည်းဖြစ်ရမယ်
Finally, he must have the virtue of not asking others to do unwholesome, unskillful actions for his own benefit.
အခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့အရေးချင်း6မျိုးနဲ့9မျိုးနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာပုဂ္ဂလသဗ္ဗာယပေါ်တာပါပဲပုဂ္ဂလသဗ္ဗာယဆိုတာတင့်တော်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လို့ဆိုပါတယ်မရောက်ဘူးပေါ့တန်တရားကိုဆင်းရဲမှလွတ်မြောက်ရေးအတွက်တကယ်အားကိုးရတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လို့ဆိုပါတယ်
A person who is endowed with these 7 qualities can thus be rightly called a good spiritual friend, or rather a suitable person to take refuge in for the sake of liberation from samsaric existence.
ခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့ဂုဏ်ရည်သွေးနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာတကယ်တော့အများရဲ့အကျိုးကိုလည်းပဲသိနာလည်သွားပါပြီ။မြတ်ပေါ်မှာအကျိုးစီးပွားတွေပေါ့လေပိစုပန်တမလို့နှစ်တအကျိုးစီးပွားတွေချမ်းသာရေးကိုမြှော်ရှုတတ်ပါပြီ။
Such a person can be assumed to be capable of understanding and realizing the welfare and happiness of others, the welfare and happiness of others in the present, in the future, and throughout samsaric wanderings.
မိမိသူတစ်ပါးတိုးတက်ကြီးပွားရေးအပိုင်းမှာလည်းပဲစိတ်ချယုံကြည်ရတဲ့တည်တံ့ခိုင်မြဲတဲ့မိတ်ဆွေကောင်းတစ်ယောက်လည်းပဲဖြစ်နိုင်ပါပြီကလျာဏမိတ်တဖြစ်နိုင်ပါပြီ
So such a person who becomes a real source of refuge for others because he himself had established himself in what is proper with respect to his own welfare, as well as with respect to other people's welfare. He can thus be called a real spiritual friend.
Mimi ko dai kaတရားနယ်တဲ့ရောက်ရှိပြီးတော့အခြေခံအနေနဲ့မတော်မတရားတဲ့ကိုယ်နှိပ်စိတ်အပြုကိုယ်နှုတ်အပြုမှုတွေကရှောင်ကျဉ်ရတဲ့သီလပေါ့မကြိုးရမပြရအောင်လို့မညှိုးရအောင်လို့အမှန်တန်ဖိုးရှိတဲ့ပစ္စည်းကိုချစ်ချစ်ခင်ခင်ပေါ့လေမြတ်မြတ်နိုးနိုးစောက်ရှောက်တယ်လို့စောက်ရှောက်တော့သီလတွေပြည့်စုံလာတယ်အထူးအဖြင့်သီလအခြေတည်ပြီးတော့အခုလိုအစစ်မြင့်တဲ့သတိပဋ္ဌာန်ဘာဝနာတရားတွေအားထုတ်လို့တနေ့တဲ့တနေ့စိတ်တည်ကြည်လင်ပြီးတော့အခြေခံဉာဏ်လေးတွေအစနောက်ဆုံးငြိမ်ကောင်းကနေပြီးတော့ငြိမ်ကောင်းအထိရောက်သွားပြီဆိုရင်ကိုကသီလမြတ်နိုးတော့တရားတွေမြတ်နိုးတော့အဲ့ဒီသီလအတွက်နဲ့တရားအတွက်နဲ့အများရဲ့ချစ်ခင်ရှင်ခံရတော့တာပဲဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့တကယ်ချစ်ခင်စရာသီလတွေကိုစောင့်တော့တရားကပြန်စောင့်လိုက်ပြီအဲ့ဒါအလိုလိုဂုဏ်တက်လာတာဒီမှာ
Once we enter the world of the Dhamma, we should try to make an attempt to establish ourselves in purity of conduct. The virtue of impeccable conduct has been talked about many times before. Purity of conduct, as you know, is essential, especially as a foundation for the practice of meditation. Precepts will help to control your verbal and physical behavior. This creates the ground, the solid ground for development of the mind, for control of your wild mind. Now, as one observes the precepts, this is called taking care of the Dhamma. It is said that if one takes good care of the Dhamma will in turn take good care of you. Based on this solid foundation of purity of conduct, one can make progress in meditation. Because of one's virtues, one becomes the object of people's love. People begin to cherish you and love you for your purity in conduct. Impeccability of conduct has a very attractive force. It is able to bring about this condition of lovableness. People begin to love you because of your purity. And this is a natural occurrence where you don't have to work for it in the sense that when you observe your precepts, you're not thinking of this result, but it's something that comes very naturally when there is impeccability of conduct.
ကိုယ်နှုတ်စိတ်ထားသုံးပါးလုံးဖြူစင်မှုရဲ့အကျိုးကိုနားလည်လို့အဲ့ဒီဟာကိုမိမိကိုယ်တိုင်ကအလေးမြတ်ထားသူမှန်ရင်တရားကပြန်ပြီးတော့တုံ့ပြန်တာပဲအဲ့တော့အများရဲ့အလေးပြုခြင်းခါရတော့တာပဲဂရုတနည်းအားဖြင့်ဂုရုဆိုတဲ့ဂုဏ်ဟာဘယ်လိုလုပ်ရလာလဲ
Being totally committed to the taming of your bodily, verbal, and mental behavior is also another aspect of taking care of the Dhamma. Because of our priorities set in this direction, the Dhamma will also automatically take care of us. Very soon, because of your immaculate behavior, you earn the respect of many people. It is a very powerful state of mind, or it is a very powerful commitment that commands respect from the wise. So this will fulfill the second qualification of a spiritual friend, commanding the respect of others due to one's purity of conduct in regard to the body, speech, and mind.
ခြေခံသီလကိုချစ်ခင်ပြီးတော့အလေးမြတ်ထားပြီးတော့စိတ်ဓာတ်တွေလည်းတိုးမြင့်အသိဉာဏ်တွေလည်းပဲတိုးမြင့်ပေးလို့ကိုယ်လုံးစိတ်ထားလေးတွေထူးထူးခြားခြားကြီးတန့်ရှင်းလာတာအရှင်လတ်လတ်ဘဝပြောင်းလာတာပေါ့လေတွေ့ရလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒီတရားတွေအကျိုးကောင်းနားလည်လာတယ်ကိုယ်မှာကိုယ်မူရာလေးတွေစင်ကြဲလာတာနှုတ်မူရာလေးတွေစင်ကြဲလာတာအထူးအဖြင့်စိတ်နေစိတ်ထားလေးတွေစင်ကြဲလာတာအတိညာလေးတွေကလည်းထူးထူးခြားခြားတိုးလာတော့တိတိတာတာကြီးပေါ့လေဘဝပြောင်းလဲမှုတွေရတယ်ဒီတရားရတာလေးတွေသိလာတော့ကိုယ့်ရဲ့နိစ္စရာပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကအစဒီရတာလေးတွေခံစားစေခြင်းနဲ့မုံကြိုလေးစားလို့ရှိရင်နိစ္စရာပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကအစစားစေခြင်းတာပေါ့လေမေတ္တာတတ်တွေဖြစ်လာပြီပြီးတော့တကယ်လို့များလေဒီလိုတရားရတာမျိုးမိဘတို့ဆရာသမားတို့မတွေ့ဘဲနဲ့များဒီတိုင်းနေလို့ရှိရင်လောကမှာလည်းပဲဆင်းရဲတော့မှာပဲနောက်တန်တရားကြီးလည်းပဲဆင်းရဲတော့မှာပဲဒီတရားတွေရစေခြင်းပါပြီဆိုတဲ့ကရုဏာတွေလည်းဖြစ်တော့တာပဲတရားထုတ်လို့တရားရတာတွေတွေ့တယ်ဆိုတဲ့ကောကနိစ္စရာပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကအစမေတ္တာကရုဏာတတ်တည်အရင်ကနဲ့မတူဘူးထူးကြလာပြီအဲလိုပေါ်တဲ့အတိုင်းလည်းပဲကြုံတွေ့တဲ့အခါပေါ့လေမေတ္တာကရုဏာထားပြီးတော့တိုက်တွန်းတော့တာပဲတိုက်တွန်းခါရတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကလည်းပဲတိုက်တွန်းတဲ့အတိုင်းအားထုတ်လို့တရားသဘောလေးတွေတွေ့သွားရင်ဟာသူတိုက်တွန်းလို့အားထုတ်လိုက်တာတရားသဘောလေးတွေတွေ့သွားတယ်အဲဒီတိုက်တွန်းတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်မေတ္တာထားတော့တာပဲကရုဏာတွေပွားတော့တာပဲကိုကတရားသဘောလေးတွေတွေ့လို့အများပုံမှာမေတ္တာကရုဏာထားပြီးတော့ဆောင်ရွက်တော့အများရဲ့မေတ္တာပွားခြင်းမေတ္တာထားခြင်းနဲ့ခါရတော့တာပဲအဲ့ဒါဘာဝနိယကုံခေါ်တယ်
your efforts at trying to maintain this impeccability of conduct, of this threefold conduct, will begin to bear fruit. There is a deep sense of fulfillment and purity in you as this immaculate conduct is being maintained. This is especially so when, having established yourself in purity of precepts, you start to meditate. The solid foundation of sila will be very conducive for making progress in meditation. Your mind becomes concentrated, peaceful and tranquil, and extremely clear, like a crystal. And in the wake of that, wisdom unfolds, and you begin to see the truth or the true nature of things as they come and go. This can be really very profound and can activate a lot of joy and rapture and awe in the truth of what is happening. In fact, you are beginning to get a taste of the Dhamma. Very delicious. And it's like eating a very delicious cake or cookie, and you begin to think of someone whom you love, your loved one, someone whom you care very deeply for, and you think of that person and would like to share this happiness, this joy of eating this delicious cookie. It's the same with your meditation. You get this tremendous flavor from the Dhamma, and immediately you think of someone whom you care for very deeply. Just as you have realized the Dhamma, so too you wish for the other person to have the same experience, to share the joy that you had. This is metta, that state of mind that truly wishes for the welfare and happiness of another without any selfish motives involved. Sometimes one may think of it another way. This is the Dhamma. By keeping the precepts, I have maintained purity of conduct, and it feels really good to be pure. And now, with that firm foundation of conduct, I'm making so deep progress in my meditation. My insights are fantastic. They give me such a clear view of what's happening from moment to moment. If my parents or my loved ones do not understand this Dhamma, do not practice this Dhamma, imagine the amount of suffering they will have to undergo. They will be engulfed in this world of delusion and will never have the opportunity to savor this taste of the Dhamma that I am now enjoying. This is karuna, the very wholesome and selfless state of mind that wishes to relieve others from suffering. So motivated by pure metta and karuna, compassion, you begin to think of ways and means to share the Dhamma with those whom you care for. Maybe you write to them or you talk to them. You try to convince them of the importance and benefits of the practice that you're doing. Perhaps you manage to talk them into keeping the precepts and doing meditation. And before long, they too will begin to experience the similar sort of joy and rapture that you did in your own practice. They will then get a taste of the Dhamma, and at that time they will remember you. Oh, it's due to such and such a person that I'm having this wonderful opportunity to experience this sort of happiness and fulfillment that I've never experienced before in my whole life. There's a sense of great gratitude, a sense of metta, that this person too will begin to feel metta for the one who introduced him into this practice of the Dhamma. Thus we see that the third quality required of a spiritual friend becomes fulfilled as one becomes the object of others' metta.
အဲဒီလိုသူတစ်ပါးတရားပြည့်စုံစေခြင်းနဲ့မေတ္တာတရားမပြည့်စေခြင်းနဲ့ကရုဏာအခြေခံပြီးတော့တိုက်တွန်းတော့တာပဲပြောတတ်လာတာပဲတကယ်လို့တရားလမ်းကြောင်းလွဲနေတာတွေ့လို့ရှိရင်လည်းပဲအပြစ်တွေကိုလည်းပဲပေါ်ပြလမ်းလွဲတာတွေလည်းပဲပေါ်ပြီးတော့ပြောတတ်လာတာပဲအလိုလိုပဲဝတ္တာဆိုတဲ့ဂုဏ်ဟာရောက်လာတယ်
If indeed the spiritual friend is concerned for his friend or student, then he will be motivated by a genuine sense of metta and karuna. You will have the metta, for example, of wishing that the student may make progress in meditation. There is also karuna, or compassion, that wishes for the student not to make mistakes, not to regress in the process of meditation. So motivated by this very genuine sense of metta and karuna, the spiritual friend will then have the courage and discretion to point out mistakes. This is the wrong path, this is the wrong practice. You should do it this way, not that way. Pointing out faults, picking out shortcomings, and straightening the path, pointing out the correct way. So this is the fourth qualification of a spiritual friend. And it comes very naturally if one is truly motivated by metta and karuna.
အဲ့ဒီလိုပြောဆိုတိုက်တွန်းရမှာပြောရဆိုရင်မှလည်းပဲ Lili Mama John Jin left Chilla. Pebogu, Velupio, May Saravoli. Eddie Chini, Luluya Latat.
When one does that often, then you will begin to get the knack of pointing out people's mistakes. You begin to cultivate a sense of great sensitivity and perceptiveness. You know how best to communicate the message to You know how best to communicate the message to a particular sort of character, a particular sort of person who has certain sensitivities and certain idiosyncrasies. You begin to be very discreet. You can exercise a lot of discretion and be very tactful in communicating the message.
Gulu Tia Lisa, Tia to this Mara, Kuku, Nale on Loda. Kuku, Tia to Chiavi, Nale on Lulu, Nale, Duavi, so ye. To the 2 level, Diabe Pala on Pelu Nale on Loa, May Surabodi. I took it, Tiaga, where I had Timbia to the Lupita. Lulu, where Pio so ye, my John General. And I never what does they call me.
In fact, meditation is a research into yourself. It is a searching into who this guy is here, into what is really happening inside, or what is it that is sitting there. When you begin to understand your non-existent self, then you can also cultivate a great understanding of others, because you have meditated deeply enough to comprehend what's happening inside you. You can now be able to lead or guide others along the similar path, so that they too can come to understand themselves in the most effective way. If you are doing this very often, then very soon you can get quite skillful in guiding others through your own experience.
Diatu Semale Sazaya, Goyo, no go, 2 hours in the Sitayo. Teach what they have, Madeda, Emanantica. A 2 hours in Macanamu and Aribola is way, Darilevatica. The other book changing letter Caraca, same as Yali Dulichi and Dicayara. Tika Shumayara. The Caraca Camatansia, your lady a car body, and a chain lady a Casasali Bioreca, Dile Dicayara. The others in Negua Dicanzidiga, Toroco Lavi. Or the other body do it like a Cajaro. Midagruna Dadiga. The car testing like this, so Ayaya ma Kuga Atamasa, and Nakane the volley body. Titik Casa, that lady Pietare. Dicane duck lady. Dican quillo de the volley, a lady Pietare. တိခံခွင့်လွတ်တဲ့သဘောကတရားထုတ်ရင်းကလည်းပဲတစင်းပြီးတစင်းဖြစ်လာတော့နောက်ဆုံးတရားကောင်းသွားတဲ့အခါတိခံစိတ်တော်တော်လေးအားကောင်းသွားတယ်အားကောင်းသွားတော့ကိုယ်ကဆုံးမတယ်လို့အများကကိုယ့်ပေါ်မှာချွေးချက်ကလေးတွေရှိလို့လာရောက်တတိပေးလို့ရှိရင်ဝန်တာအောင်မြောင်းတယ်ပေါ့လေခံယူနိုင်တဲ့အရေးချင်းနဲ့အလိုလိုပြည့်လာတာအဲ့ဒါဝဆနဲ့ကမခုံခေါ်တယ်
Right from the very start of practice, at the very fundamental level of trying to maintain purity of conduct, patience is needed. Patience is an essential element in the practice, whether it is a practice of morality or concentration or wisdom. Patience is always a necessary ingredient. It's not easy if you have led a wild life before to sort of cage yourself, so to speak, within the confines of the precepts. But with patience, of course, you can be successful. When you get into a retreat and you start to meditate, patience is also needed. You need to bring the mind back ever so often to the primary object because it's wandering off somewhere. And even when you get it quite well under control, watching your primary object, then before long you are attacked by a lot of painful sensations. Again, you have to call up all your patience to deal with that. And even after you have overcome, you have outgrown the task of watching, you've outgrown your impatience with painful sensations, you still have other obstacles to confront. And throughout your journey on the spiritual path, you have to rely on patience every now and then. When you come to see your meditation teacher for an interview, at times you have to exercise great patience. The teacher at times may appear to be really very stern and strict and admonish you for your naughtiness in not following instructions. But it's all done with good intentions to put you back on the right track. Sometimes you have to swallow your pride and cultivate a great sense of forbearance. At other times, you may have to confront difficult situations with fellow yogis. People may seem to be pretty inconsiderate when they move around or in the things they do, which you feel are intruding your privacy or is disrupting your practice. Again, you have to rely on patience to get you through that one. So you can see that even through the whole process of meditation, you are developing a great degree of patience and forbearance. When you become a spiritual friend, and you are guiding others along this path that you have walked on before. You may be approached at times by your students or your subordinates or comrades or colleagues and criticized for certain inappropriate behavior that you may have exhibited. When you realize the truth of their accusations, you should exercise the greatest patience and forbearance and readily accept their criticisms. And this is the next quality that is required of a spiritual friend. The ability to be patient and accepting of your own faults when others bring them up to you.
Yeah,တရားထုတ်စဉ်ခါမှာလည်းအမှန်လေးနဲ့တဲ့တရားတွေကြားရတယ်။သစ္စာလေးပါးနဲ့စတဲ့တရားတွေပရိစ္ဆေသမုပ္ပါဒ်နဲ့စတဲ့တရားတွေဘောဓိပက္ခိယတရားနဲ့စတဲ့စကားတွေအထူးအားဖြင့်အခုလက်တွေ့အားထုတ်နေရတဲ့သတိပဋ္ဌာန်၄ပါးနဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့တရားတွေပေါ့လေ။ပြီးတော့ဇာနဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့တရားတွေတရားမှာတစ်ဆင့်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ဥပဒနာမဲ့ညာဖူညာနိဗ္ဗာန်နဲ့စတဲ့စကားတွေဒါတွေကြားနာနေရတာကြားနာတဲ့အတိုင်းလက်တွေ့လည်းပဲလေ့လာတာအမှန်လေးနဲ့တဲ့တရားတွေလည်းကြားလဲကြားရတယ်လက်တွေ့လည်းပဲအားထုတ်တယ်ဆိုတော့ငကိုကမတည်ဘူးလို့အမှန်လေးနဲ့တဲ့တရားတွေစသိလာတာယုံနာနေသိလာတာကြောက်ကြွဆက်ပုံနေသိလာတာမျက်စိရဲ့သဘောပဲဆိုတာတွေသိလာတာဒီနည်းနဲ့ပဲအစဉ်စဉ်အမှန်လေးနဲ့တဲ့တရားတွေတည်သွားတာပြီးတော့စာရရလက်တရဓမ္မစုံသွားတာဒီနဲ့တဲ့တရားတွေကြားနာပြီးတော့လေးနဲ့တဲ့တရားသဘောလေးတွေသိနေတာဒီတရားသဘောလေးတွေသိနေတော့သူများကိုလည်းပဲဒီလေးနဲ့ဟောနိုင်တယ်ပြောနိုင်တယ်တိုက်တွန်းနိုင်တယ်တရားမှတစ်ဆင့်စာပေနဲ့ပေါင်းစပ်ပြီးတော့ဟောရပြောရလို့ရှိရင်ပိုးပြီးတော့ကိုလေးနဲ့ပြောနိုင်လာတယ်အဲ့ဒါကံမိဒံစကထံကတ္တာဆိုတာဒီအရေးချင်းအလိုလိုရလာတာ
When you're in retreat and in the process of meditating, you have the opportunity to listen to Dhamma talks very frequently, regularly. In the Dhamma talks, you are introduced to very profound topics, very profound subjects of the Dhamma, like the Four Noble Truths, for example, or the 37 factors of enlightenment, or the law of dependent origination, and especially the four foundations of mindfulness, Vipassana, the various types or levels of Vipassana insights, as well as the insight of path and fruition consciousness. You are introduced to many other subjects which are really very profound. And not only are you learning these things on a theoretical level, but you are practicing to understand such profound dhammas in a very, very personal and experiential way. There is understanding on the intellectual level as you listen to the Dhamma talks. But there is also understanding on the intuitive level. When you carry on your practice, you begin to discover by yourself in a very personal and experiential way the true nature of mind and matter, and how they are conditioned by cause and effect, how they exhibit the characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness. These and other insights arise in you, and you have and you develop sound knowledge of the Dhamma, both intellectually and experientially. Thus, in the process of participating in a retreat, this quality of a spiritual friend can, to a large extent, be fulfilled, because you have heard and understood on an intellectual level profound dhammas, and experienced them at a very intuitive and personal level. You will then be able to make use of that knowledge to give profound Dhamma talks. If, however, you are not merely satisfied with that, but continue to deepen your theoretical understanding of the scriptures, then this will even be much better. Then your talks can really be very profound and well substantiated by scriptural evidence. Thus, this qualification of a spiritual friend is fulfilled.
Sabipiriyati Matachwane Yogi Neswabhyati Dhanani Tai Adhulu Yudhi Adhulu Sisa Adhulu the other body Chigan Sabila Sisi Tuibago Sapine Hibido Shimbia Atani Miaja Lucia Sapi Line Ponyo Mimi Adhulu Tuya Dia Line Ponyo Namu Pomsa Bido Turu Chajaji go to Garetama, Povoluni Dilatari. A yogi, Tuiba.
Some yogis may not be very learned in the scriptures. They may not be very learned in the theory of practice. But because they have a lot of faith in the teacher, and they carry out their practice diligently and obediently, they make very fast progress. The practice deepens, and when they listen to Dhamma talks which substantiate their personal experience with scriptural evidence, then they can truly appreciate the profundity of their own experience as well as that of the scriptures. They can be filled with tremendous joy and happiness to come to that sort of understanding and appreciation. This is the experience which you can perhaps best testify for yourself.
Lina de the other body, Tila, Tia Atodom Mave, Cha Biaboguri, Hoya Ramim Hopene, Cook Kamatansia, Goveko, Pian Hoya, she there. I don't look Dwebo lady, two Chaja Hari, Kamatansia, Timbia, the Kamatansia, Holder of Penida, Lilian and Go Viola, Biona. ဒီချင်းလေးတွေကအောက်ဝယ်ကောင်းတော့အောင်ပေါ့လေရလာတာတိတ်ထူးကြတယ်တချို့များတရားတွေ့လေးတွေပြောပုံတက်တက်ကြွကြွနဲ့ပေါ့လေထူးကြပုံလေးတွေပြပြတတ်တွေ့ပုံလေးပြောပြတာလေဒါကာမိရဇကထာကတ္တာဆိုတဲ့ဒီချင်းနဲ့ထည့်ရမှာပဲ
Another manifestation of this quality of having the capacity to give a profound Dhamma talk is seen in the interview session. Some yogis may not be learned in the scriptures, but they are hard workers and they have deep practice going. And when they come for the interview, it's as if they're giving a very profound Dhamma talk, for they are describing or relating their direct experience, which is really very deep and profound. Sometimes it's very astonishing to listen to what such matured yogis have to say. Some of them can express themselves very well and very, very succinctly. This also is a quality that should be included in this prerequisite of a spiritual friend.
ကမ္ဘာထဆရာများကအဲ့ဒီယောဂီများရဲ့တရားနာသူအရင်ဖြစ်သွားတယ်ဒီလိုဆိုလိုပါတယ်
So the meditation teachers become the audience.
အမေသူတို့စီရလည်းပဲဘုန်းကြီးတို့ကမ္ဘာထဆရာတွေကနီးရွရတာတွေအများကြီးရှိတယ်ပြောပုံဆိုပုံလေးတွေပေါ့လေအချက်အလက်နဲ့တင်ပြပုံလေးတွေတချို့ဥပမာနဲ့တင်ပြပုံလေးတွေသိဘုဒ္ဓရတာကိုယ်တပည့်ယောဂီစီရလည်းပဲပညာတွေအများကြီးရတာအမေကိုယ်တပည့်ရလို့ထင်မြင်မသေးရဘူး
In fact, it's really a wonderful opportunity for the meditation teachers to gain a lot of experience and knowledge, to listen to the various ways of expression and sometimes very poetic descriptions of the yogi's experience. Sometimes they give very, very effective analogies and similes and stories. So meditation teachers do not in any way underestimate their students. They have a lot to learn by listening.
တဏှာကြီးတောင်မှပြည့်ဖို့နည်းနည်းပဲရှိပါတယ်ဝိရိယအဆုံးမတတ်သေးဘူးနောက်နိုင်ရွက်လောက်ဟောမှအဆုံးသတ်မှာပဲကဲပြိဿပဲလို့တော့ဘုန်းကြီးဆက်ဟောရမှာလားဒီကလျာဏမိတ်တာကြောင့်
Well, it's almost an hour now, and the Sayadaw has hardly finished his talk. He's thinking of extending for another half hour. Well, can you stand it? Perhaps the Sayadaw should just stop here and go home tomorrow. Well, should the Sayadaw continue?
Huh?
Yes.
Now, when I yogi, new we have either only Diachi, so we are the right night away, Yazunajana.
Well, we don't know about the yogis at the back. Sayadaw understands that for them it's 1 hour is the limit.
When I don't know where yogi.
Well, how about you, those at the back?
Tanga do it, and near to the
Since the Sayadaw heard only a few soft voices, he's not quite convinced.
Sayadaw will survive.
Nên này mà đấy, tí khả này mà đấy. Well, Sayadaw feels very inspired.
Chinia Yogi Kauna, no so Ningo and Nivio Ningo Yogwavi, so ye. Mita da Gruna Dadia, the Jimala, the Jimala, the Bogu ha, Kunizaya Boguga sa Chaja Bogurigo, Mimi Kujo, a duet. Matendo Nia, Mataitomba Romala. Tindore Hada, Taituno Mare, Diari Atuchizama, Koma Diwali, take on a Diave Zadi Valley. Diave Guves, where you Mave, Diave Taituno Mave. Era no Satani, Niozo Cosa Dave. Matindore, Kujo to a Mataitum Musara, Tindore Kisama, Tuju a duet. Come on, you Taitum, Lavi, so a day, a little trailer.
If the yogi is able to make further progress in meditation and go beyond merely good seeing of phenomena and attain the goodness of cessation, then something else special happens. This yogi becomes filled with a truly genuine sort of metta and karuna, loving care and kindness and compassion for other beings. In the heart of such a yogi will be the wish for the welfare of others, the wish to see others relieved of suffering. Will such a person then encourage others to do unwholesome activities for his own benefit? It is very unlikely that this will happen. If there is true metta and karuna, such a person will only encourage or urge others to do wholesome and skillful activities, things for their own welfare and happiness. Especially so, such a person will especially make it a point to encourage people to practice meditation so that they can experience the highest sort of welfare and happiness. Thus, the final qualification of a spiritual friend is fulfilled.
That's how we get a chin, piece on a pogo, the kego where to do a juicy wago, Lola Vido. He did this, or he did it. Lola at the Pin 9 day. To take GYA ma တကယ်ကြံ့ရက်တည်နိုင်စွမ်းရှိလာတယ်လို့ဘုန်းကြီးစောစောပိုင်းကပြောခဲ့ပါတယ်ဒီချင်းလေးတွေပြည့်လို့ဒီလိုဖြစ်လာတာပါ
Therefore, a person who is endowed with these 7 qualities can truly be called a spiritual friend who has at heart the welfare and happiness of others, who truly wishes that others may enjoy the benefits of well-being and happiness through the practice of meditation.
အဲဒီကလျာဏမိတ်တပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကိုကျမ်းဂန်များမြတ်စွာဘုရားဟောကြားထားတဲ့ပိယောကရုပါဝဏီယောဆိုတဲ့ဟာကိုထောက်ခံချက်ပေးတဲ့အနေနဲ့အချက်၈ချက်နဲ့ပေါ့လေအတူချုပ်ပြီးတော့ဝေဖန်ပြထားပါတယ် ဒီကပါဒီကရ sub commentary
The sub-commentaries further explain 8 other factors. Junction with these 7 prerequisites of a spiritual friend.
ကလျာဏမိတ်တပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာတတ္တနဲ့လည်းပဲပြည့်စုံလာတယ်တဲ့ပရမအချက်ပဲ
A good spiritual friend is endowed with good faith.
ပြီးတော့သီလနဲ့လည်းပဲပြည့်စုံလာတယ်တဲ့သီလစံပါဏဆိုတာ
He is also pure in conduct.
ပြီးတော့သုတစံပါဏတုတ္တနဲ့လည်းပြည့်စုံလာတယ်တဲ့စာရွေတုတ္တရောလက်တွေ့တုတ္တရောပေါ့လေပြည့်စုံလာတယ်
He also has the qualification of learning with respect to theoretical knowledge of practice as well as experiential knowledge of practice.
ပြီးတော့ကြာကစံပါဏစာကနဲ့လည်းပြည့်စုံလာတယ်တဲ့တရားတွေကောင်းလာပြီဆိုရင်တူခြင်းတန်းခြင်းအားပေးခြင်းပေါ့လေဒီမှာဒီစိတ်တွေဖြစ်လာတာဒါစာကနဲ့ပြည့်စုံလာတာတကယ်လက်တွေ့လည်းပဲဖြစ်လာတာပဲဒါတွေက
He is also endowed with the virtue of generosity. He is a benevolent person. When such a person has gained very deep insight, charity comes very naturally. Charity in the sense of making offerings, doing dana, as well as in the giving of the Dhamma, in encouraging and inspiring others to practice.
ပြီးတော့ဝိရိယစံပါဏဝိရိယနဲ့လည်းပြည့်စုံလာတယ်တဲ့တကယ်ကိုရဲရင်လာတာအခက်အခဲတွေကြောလာတယ်ဆိုတော့တိတ်ကိုရဲရင်လာတာပဲ
He is also filled with courageous effort. Whenever he faces any difficulties, he will be able to confront such situations with forbearance and courage.
ပြီးတော့စတိစံပါဏ ရှုမှတ်မြဲမြဲဆွဲဆွဲရှုမှတ်တဲ့တတိနဲ့လည်းပဲပြည့်စုံလာတယ်စောစောပိုင်းကဆိုရင်တတိတစ်စက်မှမရှိဘူးနောက်တစ်ဖြည်းဖြည်းတတိတွေဖြစ်လာပြီးတော့တကယ်တရားကောင်းသွားတဲ့အခါမှာတတိတွေထူးခြားခြားပြည့်စုံလာတယ်
He is also endowed with the capacity to activate firm mindfulness. When he first started meditation, mindfulness is very feeble and weak and inconsistent. But when practice deepens, then it becomes really very firm and durable.
စမာဓိနဲ့လည်းပြည့်စုံလာတယ်တဲ့
He is also endowed with concentration.
ပညာစံပါဏပညာနဲ့လည်းပြည့်စုံလာတယ်ယုံနာပိုက်ခြားသိမှုအစအစဉ်စဉ်ဥပဒနာဉာဏ်လေးတွေဖြစ်ပြီးတော့နောက်ဆုံးငြိမ်းတာနိဗ္ဗာန်ကိုမဉ္ဇဉ်ဖူညာနဲ့တွေ့မြင်သွားတဲ့အခါပညာနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတယ်ဆိုတာသိထင်ရှားတာအထူးအားဖြင့်တရားရပြီးတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာကျိုးရှိမရှိတော်မတော်ဆိုတာချင့်မြော်နိုင်တဲ့ပညာတွေပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒါတွေပါတခါလေးရလာတာသိထူးကြတာ
Finally, he is also endowed with wisdom. There is first of all the wisdom of insight into the true nature of mind and matter, their conditionality, their characteristic of impermanence and unsatisfactoriness and selflessness, and the rest of the whole series of insights, as well as insight into Nibbana that is gained upon the occurrence of the noble path consciousness. What is even more extraordinary is the wisdom that comes out of the completion of these insights. It is the wisdom of discretion, of being able to distinguish that which will conduce to welfare and happiness and that which is unbeneficial.
ဒီလိုယုံကြည်မှုတရားနဲ့ပြေဝလာတဲ့ဖြင့်မြတ်စွာဘုရားရဲ့ဉာဏ်တော်ကြီးကိုလည်းပဲယုံကြည်လာတယ်။ကံကံအကျိုးကိုလည်းပဲယုံကြည်လာတယ်။ကောင်းတာလို့ရင်ကောင်းကျိုးရဆိုးတာလို့ရင်ဆိုးပြရဆိုတာပေါ့လေမလွှဲမသွေယုံကြည်တယ်။ငါကလည်းပဲယုံကြည်ရှိတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တရားနဲ့ဆင့်ပြလိုက်တယ်ဆိုတော့ပိုးကိုပဲကံနဲ့ကံအကျိုးကိုယုံကြည်လာတာ
If one has good faith that comes through practice, then one will very naturally have faith in the greatness of the Buddha, in the omniscient and supreme wisdom of the Buddha. If the yogi before meditation had been one who believed anyway in the law of karma, the faith that is gained through practice will further consolidate that belief. And if practice becomes really very deep, then faith in the law of karma becomes unshakable.
အဲ့ဒီလိုတတ္တတရားနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့အတွက်သမ္မာသံဘောဓိဆိုတာပေါ့အဖောင်းပြန်ကိုယ်ပိုင်သိတော်မူတဲ့ဉာဏ်တော်ကြီးအဲ့ဒီဉာဏ်တော်ကြီးရဲ့အရင်းခံဖြစ်တဲ့တတ္တဝါတွေပေါ်မှာအလွန်ကျင်နာသနာတဲ့မဟာကရုဏာတော်ကြီးကိုလည်းပဲလက်ခံလာတော့တာပဲမြတ်စွာဘုရားဟာတတ္တဝါတွေပေါ်မှာအလွန်ကျင်နာသနာပါလားဘုရားလောင်းတော်ဘဝတည်းကအလွန်ကျင်နာသနာဘုရားဖြစ်တဲ့အခါအထူးပြောစရာမရှိဘူးဆိုတာပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒီမဟာကရုဏာဉာဏ်တော်ကြီးကိုလည်းလက်မလွတ်တော့
The faith that believes in the Sammasambodhi or the perfect and self-enlightened knowledge or wisdom of the Buddha will also automatically believe in the great compassion that was the motivating force behind the efforts made in order to attain this Sammasambodhi. This great compassion is that this great compassion followed the Bodhisattva in his various and innumerable lifetimes as he was trying to perfect the paramis, becomes something that is believed in very firmly. If the Bodhisattva had been so compassionate, then what of the Buddha when he actually became enlightened? You can imagine how much greater the compassion will be.
ပြီးတော့သီလနဲ့ပြည့်စုံလာတဲ့ဖြင့်အားလုံးပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေရဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်များရဲ့ချစ်ခင်ခြင်းခံရတဲ့ပိယလေးစားခြင်းခံရတဲ့ကရုဉာဏ်တို့ခြင်းခံရတဲ့ဘာဝနိယဒီကုံတွေလည်းပဲအလိုလိုလာတော့တာပဲ
When one is pure in conduct, as we mentioned earlier, one will automatically become the object of people's love, people's respect, and will be cherished by others. So these virtues come very automatically when there is impeccability of conduct.
မြတ်ရဲ့ချစ်ခင်မြတ်နိုးခြင်းလေးစားခြင်းချစ်ခင်မြတ်နိုးခြင်းခါပြီဆိုရင်မလျော်တဲ့အမှုတွေမလျော်တဲ့သဘောတွေတွေ့ရင်ဒီလိုမနေရဘူးဒီလိုနေရတယ်ဟောဒီလိုနေတာကောင်းတယ်စသည်ပေါ့လေကြောရကဆိုတာပေါ့လေအဖြစ်တွေပြပြီးတော့လည်းပဲနိလန့်နေပြပြီးတော့လည်းပဲပြောတတ်ဆိုတာလာတယ်မတော်တာတွေပြုတ်နေတာတွေ့ရင်ခုအနေသားကြီးပဲဆိုတော့ဒီလိုမနေဘူးကျင်တဲ့သဘောကရှိနေတော့အဖြစ်တွေပြပြီးတော့သူကနိလန့်ညွန်တတ်တယ်နိဗ္ဗာန်လမ်းကောင်းလုပ်တတ်တယ်
When one becomes the object of others' affection, respect, and love, then due to one's purity of conduct, then one can be very successful in creating conditions for people to change for the better, in the sense that one can exercise tact and discretion in pointing out others' faults and shortcomings out of deep compassion, so that they can correct themselves and grow into more complete people.
ပြီးတော့ပါပကရဟိဆိုတာပါလေရုပ်မာတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေကိုလည်းပဲရှုပ်ချလာတတ်တယ်ရှုပ်ချတယ်ဆိုတာလည်းပဲတက်တက်အပြစ်ပြောတာတော့မဟုတ်ပါဘူးအဲ့ဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေမတွေ့လို့ဘူးအဲ့ဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေစကားနားမထောင်လို့ဘူးအဲ့ဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေနဲ့အတူတကွနေရမှာဝင်လေးလာတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့လို့သူတို့တော့ကောင်းတဲ့လမ်းကြောင်းတော့ရောက်စေခြင်းတယ်လေမကောင်းတဲ့ရုပ်မာတဲ့ဟာတွေကိုတော့ကြည့်ရလာတတ်တယ် Kaya sura api the bobby na kaya data jora. Joraga a pipiala. Yeah, okay.
Appeal the bonnet care.
You might have booked in Madrid. You might have booked your Namatown, the Runet to manage him, the body pillar. Do go in the Ponian as well.
And I do 60 months again. When one is able to distinguish between what is wholesome and what is not, what is skillful and what is not, then one can exercise, one is able to size up a person. And if indeed one finds out or one concludes through one's observations that that person is very unskillful or rough or very wild and uncivilized, then one can be filled with thoughts of criticisms. Oh, I don't want to mix with that sort of person. He's so rough and so uncivilized and so unskillful. I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to mix with him. I just want to stay clear. Now this, of course, is confined to the mind, but it is a good attitude because then you will not be mixing with bad company. However, if at times there is great compassion, then one could attempt to try to bring that wayward person onto the right track. When one is really impeccable in one's conduct, one can very easily exercise patience, forbearance, when others criticize oneself, when others point out one's own mistakes or faults. One can even be very accepting of one's faults and be very willing in a cheerful way to correct oneself. When one is learned, then one will be able to discourse on very profound subjects like the Four Noble Truths, the 37 factors of enlightenment, the law of dependent origination, and the like. When one becomes when one is endowed with charity, then very automatically one becomes contented with little. One further gains the virtue of desiring little and being content with whatever one gets.
ဒီတရားထုတ်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်အပူတွေမလိုတော့ဘူးလိုအပ်တဲ့ဟာလောက်နဲ့ပဲကျဉ်းလာတာဒီမှာသိကောင်းတဲ့ကုံကြီး
Although in the past one may be very extravagant and have a lot of greed in looking for things which are superfluous or extras, when one is endowed with this virtue of charity and that of desiring little, then contentment with what is necessary and essential can also be achieved. One is contented with only that which is essential, and extras are no longer desired.
ပြီးတော့ဘဝဝိတ္တကင်းကင်းရှင်းရှင်းကာယဝိကစိတ္တဝိကဥပရိဝိကဆိုတာပေါ့လေဝိက၃မျိုးနဲ့လည်းပြည့်စုံလာတတ်တယ်ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်နဲ့ကင်းကင်းရှင်းရှင်းနေတာပုဂ္ဂိုလ်နဲ့မပြောအစောပိုင်းရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အဖော်ရှိမှပြောတတ်တာအခုဖော်ပါပဲနဲ့နေတတ်လာတယ်အဖော်ပါနဲ့တယောက်တည်းပြောအောင်နေတတ်လာတယ်ပြီးတော့အမှတ်ကလေးနဲ့နေတတ်လာတယ်စိတ်ငြိမ်ငြိမ်ပေါ့လေငြိမ်တာလေးပါတွေ့သွားပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒီငြိမ်တာလေးနဲ့လည်းနေတတ်တာပဲ
ဝိဝေကကို
ဝိဝေကပေါ့
ဒီရောင်ရဲကနေပြီးတော့ဝိဝေကဖြစ်တယ်Being contented with little is also very conducive to seclusion. There are three types of seclusion. Seclusion of company, seclusion of mind, and seclusion of suffering. Seclusion of company means that you are able to live a secluded life without having to rely on another's company. Before you meditated, before you are endowed with the virtues that were mentioned just now, you are very gregarious. You're always seeking company and can only be happy when you are in the company of others. But now it's different. Even without a comrade, even without a friend, you can be very satisfied and contented living alone by yourself. When there is good mindfulness and you are able to meditate deeply, then you can gain the second sort of seclusion. Seclusion of mind, seclusion from the kilesas. Where your mind is secluded is very remote from the hindrances and so forth. Eventually you may succeed in gaining the next sort of seclusion, which is a synonym for nibbana.
ပြီးတော့အသံသတ္ထဆိုတာကဲ့ရဲ့ပြည့်တယ်ဝဲကောင်းတဲ့အမြင်မျိုးအကြာမျိုးအနာမျိုးစသည်ပေါ့လေဒါမျိုးလေးနဲ့ရောနှုံတော့လည်းပဲအပြစ်တင်ဝဲခံရလောက်အောင်လည်းမနေတော့ဘူးအသံသတ္ထဆိုတာရောနှုံတော့နေတာအပြစ်တင်ဝဲရတယ်ရှေးလေးဟာလာနဲ့ရောနှုံတော့နေတာ
And one can also one can also have a feeling of disgust for company, disgust to mingle with people, and there is a preference to be alone.
အဲ့ဒီအပိစ္ဆဆိုတဲ့ဂုဏ်နဲ့စပြီးတော့နည်းနည်းလေးပြောကြရရှိပါတယ်အလိုနည်းတယ်ဆိုတာပေါ့လေတရားသမားတွေကအလိုနည်းရမှာ တရားနဲ့စပ်ပြီးတော့လူနေတာလေးတွေလည်းပဲသိတိထားဖို့ကောင်းပါတယ်ခုတနည်းပြောတဲ့မာတိကတက္ကမကြီးဆိုတာယောဂီအပင်ကြီးနေလဲရထားတယ်အနာဂတ်လည်းဖြစ်နေတာပဲရဟန်းတော်တွေရဲ့စိတ်နေစိတ်ထားကိုသိပြီးတော့ရဟန်းတော်တွေလိုတဲ့ဟာတွေသူကဖန်တီးပေးတာနောက်တစ်ဆင့်တက္ကမကြီးရဲ့ဂုံကိုရဟန်းတစ်ပါးကကြားလို့ပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒီတက္ကမကြီးဆောက်လုပ်ထားတဲ့အကြောင်းမှာလာပြီးတော့ရောက်လာတယ်အဲဒီရောက်လာတဲ့အခါသူကလည်းခီးပန်းတော့ကျောင်းရှင်းမဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်များဖြော်ရည်လေးများစတုဘလူလေးများလာကြရင်ကောင်းမှာပဲဆိုတာပေါ့လေဒီလိုအကြံဖြစ်တာဒီမကြီးကအကြံဖြစ်တဲ့အတိုင်းလာပြီးတော့ကတ်တာပဲနောက်ဆုံးတစ်ခုပြီးတစ်ခုပေါ့လေကိုလိုရှိတဲ့ဟာလေးတွေတောင်းတာတော့မကြီးကလူလွတ်ပြီးတော့ပို့တာနောက်ဆုံးဒကမကြီးကိုယ်တိုင်ပဲလာလို့တဲ့ဆန္ဒဖြစ်နေဓမ္မကြီးကိုယ်တိုင်ပဲလာရောက်ပြီးတော့ဆွနေပါလိပို့တယ်အဲ့ဒါလိုအခါမှာအခုနောက်အတိတ်ကြွလာတဲ့ကိုတော်ကဒီဒကမကြီးကိုအပင်ရှင်နဲ့စပ်ပြီးတော့မေးတယ်အဲ့လိုမေးတဲ့အခါမှာဒကမကြီးရဲ့တုတ်ပြန်ကြလေးတွေသိစိတ်ဝင်စားစရာကောင်းတာ
In connection with this virtue of desiring little, Sayadaw would like to say something more about it. Desiring little is a virtue that is very important, especially in meditation. A story perhaps will be appropriate to illustrate the point. This is the story of Matika Mata, which most of you must be familiar with. Now, Matika Mata had become a noble one. She had practiced very diligently in the midst of the household chores and succeeded in becoming an anagami, complete with psychic powers. And being very grateful to the forest monks who had given her the meditation, she tried to accommodate each of their likes and dislikes. She made use of a psychic power to find out what each monk's favorite food was for the day, and she took the trouble to cook the dish and offer it to the forest monks. Very soon, her fame spread far and wide, and it came to the ears of a greedy bhikkhu, who immediately set forth to where this very faithful and devoted lady was staying. She arrived in the area, and very soon he started sending thought beeps. So wouldn't it be nice if someone came to sweep up this place? Wouldn't it be nice if someone came with some fruit juice and maybe some tutumadu? And sure enough, Matika Mata was on the spot. She came and made sure that the place was well swept, and fruit juice was offered, and so was the tumadu. And so this bhikkhu continued to stay in that place and started to make more and more absurd demands. And very soon, instead of sending people or servants to serve this bhikkhu, Matika Mata came herself.
အဲ့လိုလာပို့တဲ့ဆုံးကိုစားပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီယဟန်ကတက္ကမကြီးမေးတယ်မာတိကမာတာဆိုတာတက္ကမကြီးလားဟုတ်ပါတယ်တာရဲ့တို့တက္ကမကြီးကသူများရဲ့စိတ်တွေသိတယ်ဆိုတာဟုတ်လားဒီလိုတည်းရမေးတယ်အဲ့ဒီလိုမေးတဲ့အခါတက္ကမကြီးကဘာဖြစ်လို့တပည့်တော်မကိုဒီလိုမေးရတယ်လို့ခင်ဗျာတဲ့ဦးစင်ကြံစီတိုင်းတက္ကမကြီးကအကုန်လုံးကိုလှုပ်ပေးနေတာပဲတဲ့ပြုလုပ်ပေးနေရပဲတဲ့ဒါကြောင့်မလို့တက္ကမကြီးကိုဒီလိုမေးတာပါတဲ့တက္ကမကြီးဟုတ်လားတဲ့သူများစိတ်သိတာဒီလိုမေးတယ်တက္ကမကြီးကဘယ်လိုပြန်ဖြေတယ်လဲဆက်ပြီးတော့နားထောင်ကြည့်ပေါ့လေ
When this greedy bhikkhu first arrived in the vicinity and had made all these wishes, Mattika Mata did not come personally, but sent someone to see to his wishes. After some time, he was curious as to who this woman was. So he sent a message and he said, well, wouldn't it be nice to have Mattika Mata herself come serve me lunch today? And sure enough, Mattika Mata came and served him lunch. And he was very bold. And he asked this lady, are you Mattika Mata? And he said, yes. Is it true that you have abhinya? Is it true that you can read people's minds? Why do you ask, Bhante? Well, all my wishes have come true ever since I arrived here. And guess what Mattika Mata said?
အဲ့ဒီဝါရပြန်ဖြေတယ်သူတစ်ပါးရဲ့စိတ်ကိုသိတဲ့ယဟန်နေဆိုတာပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေဆိုတာရှိကြပါတယ်ဖေဟာတဲ့ဒီလိုပဲပြန်ဖြေတယ်
သူတစ်ပါးရဲ့စိတ်ကို
ပရจิตတံဉာဏန္တာဘိက္ခုဘဟုတာတာတဲ့လူပြန်ဖြေတယ်
She was very modest. She said, son, there are many bhikkhus who can read other people's minds.
ဒီရဟန်းကဆင့်ပြီးတော့ပြောပြန်တယ်ဦးစင်းကသူများမေးတာမဟုတ်ဘူးဒကမာကြီးကိုမေးနေတာဒီလိုတစ်ခါတဆင့်တက်ပြန်ရော
But this bhikkhu was pretty adamant. I'm not asking about other people. I want to know if you can read other people's minds.
ဒီလိုအကြက်ကင်ပြီးတော့မေးတာတော့မှမာတိကဒကမာကြီးဟာသူတို့ဘာရဲ့စိတ်ကိုသိပါတယ်လို့တိုက်ရိုက်မပြောဘူးသူတို့ဘာရဲ့စိတ်ကိုသိတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်များဟာဒီလိုပဲဆောင်ရွက်တတ်ပါတယ်ဖေဟာတဲ့ဒီလိုပဲလုပ်တတ်ပါတယ်တဲ့တွဲဝတ်တဲ့နည်းနဲ့ပဲဖြေတယ်
Even when she was being confronted and pressured in this way, Mattika Mata remained very, very modest. She said, son, people who can read others' minds practice in this way. That was all she said. တရားနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့အပိစ္ဆခုံရှိကိုသိအရေးကြီးပါတယ်။မိရတရားအထုတ်သူပဲအထုတ်ထားသူပဲဗာတရားရသူပဲဆိုတာပေါ့လေ။ကြည်ကြည်လေးလေးတိတ်တိတ်တဲတဲလေးပေါ့လေ။ခုခေတ်ကလူထဲမှာတော့မှနေတတ်တာအပိစ္ဆခုံနဲ့ပြည့်စုံပြီးတော့နေတတ်တာ။ So this virtue of modesty, or desiring little, meaning even desiring little fame and recognition and acknowledgement and so forth. Now this virtue of modesty is very important in meditation, especially is relevant to yogis. As you can see, during the time of the Buddha, accomplished yogis are very modest about their attainments. They don't go around broadcasting their attainments. And even when pressured in such a circumstance, they still remain admirably modest. Yogis today too should try to follow that example. If people should come and ask you about your meditative experience, it is not necessary to brag about how much you know or how deep your insight is.
ဝိရိယနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့ဖြင့်မိမိအကျိုးစီးပွားအစစ်မှသူတစ်ပါးရဲ့အကျိုးစီးပွားအစစ်မှကိုကျင့်သုံးရေးမှာပို့ပြီးတော့ရဲရဲရင်းရင်းနဲ့ပေါ့လေပြက်ပြက်သားသားနဲ့အထုတ်လာတတ်တယ်ကြိုးစားလာတတ်တယ်ဝိရိယနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့ဖြင့်သူတစ်ပါးအစီးပွားမိမိအစီးပွားသူတစ်ပါးအစီးပွားကိုကျင့်သုံးရမှာပို့ပြီးတော့ရဲရင်လာတယ်ပို့ပြီးတော့ဝိရိယတွေတက်တက်ကြွကြစိတ်တွေတက်တက်ကြွနဲ့ဆောင်ရွက်လာတတ်တယ်ဒါမျိုး
When one is endowed with the quality of effort, then one can be very bold and courageous in executing one's duties or responsibilities, especially those connected with one's own welfare, as well as the welfare and happiness of others.
တတိနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့ဖြင့်အရာရာမှာလောကီရေးမှာရောဓမ္မရေးမှာရောပေါ့လေတတိကရှိဥစွာဥနေတယ်တတိကရှိနေတတ်တယ်ဒီမှာအဲ့ဒီတတိရှိတာသိကောင်းတာဒီမှာ
When one is endowed with mindfulness, one can have presence of mind. For mindfulness then becomes a leading mental factor that will always be ahead of what you are doing. Always be out there scouting, so to speak. Whether it is in the field of Dhamma or in the world, you can have mindfulness as a reliable companion.
သမာဓိနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့ဖြင့်မပြတ်မလွန်မဲနဲ့ကိစ္စအဝဝတွေကိုတည်တည်ငြိမ်ငြိမ်နဲ့လှုပ်တက်လာတတ်တယ်လှုပ်လာတတ်တယ်
If you have the virtue of concentration, then you will be able to get absorbed in whatever you are doing without getting scattered or distracted by other things. Your concentration then will bring about a very peaceful and cool sort of demeanor, both mentally and externally.
ပညာနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့ဖြင့်မှန်မှန်ကန်ကန်ကြီးလည်းပဲနားလည်ပြီးတော့ဆောင်ရွက်လာတတ်တယ်
If one is endowed with wisdom, then one can exercise discretion in whatever one is doing and execute your duties in the most appropriate and befitting way.
ဒီတော့အဲ့ဒီကလျာဏပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာတတိလက်ကင်ထားပြီးတော့ကုသိုလ်အကုသိုလ်တို့ရဲ့အလားအလာတွေကိုလည်းပဲရှာဖွေသိရှိပြီးတော့နားလည်လာတတ်တယ် အတိပညာနဲ့လည်းပဲတတ္တဝါတွေရဲ့အကျိုးစီးပွားမှန်မှန်ကိုလည်းပဲဟုတ်တိုင်းမှဆိုတာနားလည်လာတတ်တယ်။တမာရီနဲ့ပြည့်စုံနေတော့အဲ့ဒီတမာရီနဲ့ပဲဆောင်ရွက်ရမယ့်ကိစ္စတွေမှာတည်တည်ငြိမ်ငြိမ်ရှိပြီးတော့ဝိရိယနဲ့တတ္တဝါတွေကိုအကျိုးစီးပွားမဖြစ်ထွန်းတဲ့ဟာတွေကိုဟန်တားပြီးတော့အကျိုးစီးပွားဖြစ်ထွန်းတဲ့ဟာတွေကိုပဲတိုက်တွန်းလာတတ်တယ်။အဲ့ဒီအရေးချင်းတွေအလိုလိုပြည့်စုံလာတာ။ဒါကအဲ့ဒီကလျာဏပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာတတိနဲ့ပြည့်စုံတော့ဒါကုသိုလ်ဒါအကုသိုလ်ဆိုတာပါလေဒီလိုအလားအလာတွေကိုလည်းပဲကောင်းကောင်းရှာဖွေသိရှိလာတယ်ပေါ့သတိထားလာတယ်
သတိရှာနောက်ပြီးတော့ပညာ
နဲ့ပြည့်စုံတဲ့တတ္တဝါများရဲ့ကျိုးစီးပွားစစ်မစစ်ဆိုတော့ဟိုတိုင်းမှာဆိုတာနားလည်လာတယ်
If the spiritual friend is a mindful person, or rather, since the spiritual friend is supposed to be a mindful person, then he will be able to be mindful of all those things which are conducive to benefit and welfare, and those that are not. He will have the wisdom to distinguish between those things that will be most appropriate for beings and those which are not. Endowed with concentration, he will be able to undertake his task of helping himself as well as other beings in a very concentrated and dedicated way. And since he is also endowed with virya or effort, then he will be very diligent and hardworking in fulfilling this goal of seeing to the welfare and happiness of beings.
ဟုတ်နော်အဲ့ဒါကိုပြောခဲ့တာကလျာဏမိတ်တာဆိုတာအဲ့ဒါပါပဲတရားအစကလျာဏမိတ်တာဆိုတာဒါပဲအခုဒီမှာကလျာဏမိတ်တာဆိုတာဒီလိုအလုံးနဲ့တဖြည်းဖြည်းအည်သွေးတွေပြည့်စုံပြီးတော့ဖြစ်ပေါ်လာတဲ့ကလျာဏမိတ်တာအဲ့ဒီကလျာဏမိတ်တာအမိရတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေဟာမြတ်သောအကျင့်ကျင့်သုံးရင်းမှာယာနှုံးပြည့်အကျိုးတွေရတတ်တယ်တဲ့ဒီလိုဆိုပါတယ်ဒီတော့ဒီကုန်းချုပ်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ဘုန်းကြီးတို့အခုဒီဌာနကကြီးကဲပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေကအစပါလေအားလုံးတရားစိတ်ဝင်စားကြတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်များမိမိတို့ကိုယ်တိုင်လည်းပဲရှေးဥစွာမှန်ကန်တဲ့သီပဋ္ဌာန်ဘာဝနာတရားကိုအထုတ်ခြင်းအပြင်ကလျာဏမိတ်တာအည်သွေးတွေပြည့်စုံပြီးတော့တာဝန်ရှိတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်များကလည်းအခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့ကလျာဏမိတ်တာအစစ်အည်သွေးတွေပြည့်စုံပြီးတော့ကလျာဏမိတ်တာခြင်းသာသနာကိစ္စကိုဆောင်ရွက်နိုင်ရပြီးတော့ကိုချမ်းသာစိတ်ချမ်းသာနဲ့နောက်ဆုံးနိဗ္ဗာန်ချမ်းသာရပြီးတော့အပေလေးပါးကလွတ်မြောက်နိုင်တော့တဲ့ဒီကျိုးစားပွားများအထောက်နိုင်ကြပါစေလို့ဒီနေ့ညအဆုံးသတ်ပေါ့လေတရားဒီကုန်းချုပ်လိုက်ပါတယ်
So now you will know what a spiritual friend is. A spiritual friend, complete with all these qualities, can be the whole of the brahmacharya, the whole of the holy life, as the Buddha said to Ananda. If you have the good and wonderful opportunity to meet with a spiritual friend, then you are on the right path. And for you, it's 100%. You're 100% certain that you can take on the holy life to its full completion. That I hope that all of you will be able to take to heart these qualifications, prerequisites of a spiritual friend, and strive to fulfill all of them so that you can be real, good, spiritual friends and help to spread the Dhamma to others for your welfare as well as for others' welfare and happiness. In the process, may you also achieve success in your committed Dhamma mission and gain and attain enlightenment for yourself and help your students to attain enlightenment.